Anyway, let's talk crypto because
From beef to crypto.
if we've seen it, we just talk about what dudes like talking about: meat and crypto.
Yeah.
This is our good old friend Nick Black. We've talked to him many times over the years on different mediums, and here we are. Perhaps we're even on DZTV with this segment. Who knows? Hey, Nick.
How's it going, guys?
Check him out on YouTube. Search Nick Black. Yes, you've been extolling the greatness of crypto for many years. In fact, many, many years ago, maybe even a decade, maybe more. You helped me buy my Bitcoin when I was out there at training camp. And that one Bitcoin is worth a lot more than it was back then. I can't even remember if it was 3,000 or 6,000, but at the time it seemed like, boy, that's a lot. And then we've lived together through some volatility. Went up to 16, went back. I just remember like 16 was the high for a while. Then it went back to like the 6, and you're like, oh man, should have sold there at 16. Then it goes up to like 60, and then it was down to like 30 for quite some time. Like, damn it, I should have sold at 60. And then we wake up the other day, and these guys are like, "Did you see Bitcoin?" And it was like upset, and now it's like 89. I guess it was hovering around 60 for a while. Now it's around 90.
It was 93. It was 93 yesterday. 93 and a half.
Like in 3 days, it just makes this huge jump.
All they needed was a tweet from Scottie Pippen.
Well, not to get into the political stuff, but when you remove all the barriers, I mean, there's not much left other than like global thermonuclear war. There's not much in the way of these assets just continuing to bloat and bloat and bloat. It's like a hedge against stupidity. Do you think politicians and central bankers and all that, do you think all those people are going to be smarter or dumber moving forward? Or the same? If it's the same or dumber, you buy Bitcoin. It's a hedge against stupidity, and stupidity is a bottomless well, apparently.
Okay, so yeah, why politically though? You say is this
so?
Like go ahead.
Yeah, so when Trump came in, well, to be careful, when the changes that happened last week happened, it removed a bunch of the anti-crypto, and not just anti-crypto, but just anti-technology, anti-AI, old school octogenarian politicians. These career politicians that make, 120K a year and somehow retire being, having 20 million bucks in the bank. You're like, oh, weird. How do they do that? So when those group got voted out, pushed out, it removed all of the barriers, all of the anti-AI, the anti-crypto, the anti-tech, the future finance people. So regulatorily, a lot of things just got easier. And so now passing pro-finance, pro-crypto, these kinds of regulatory clarity so that companies can come back to the U.S. and start building, because what the other group of the last 4 years did is effectively push all these companies offshore. They just said, F you, we're out. We're not going to mess with this. U.S. isn't the only game in town. There's like the whole rest of the world. So they just left, which is like, how it takes 14 minutes on the internet to like reincorporate and just move your banks. And so the U.S. lost, I don't know how many billions, lots. And a lot of really good, smart people just said, I'm checking out. So they booked it as far as their work, right? Like they could work remote, but they left the U.S. as far as workers. So all that brain power just bailed. And now it looks like we can start onboarding those companies again, because they're not like scared of the Gary Genslers of the world, who pretty much done. He's polishing his resignation letter. He runs the SEC, or at least for the next 18 minutes. And all of these politicians that were grinding and saying crypto is just used for pornography and crime, those people have pretty much been muzzled. So for the next 4 years, it's going to be a different environment where it looks like regulators are going to actually put normal laws in place, normal rules in place for doing business in the crypto space, in the AI space, and just in tech in general. And it just like, there's no headwinds. Like with that one election, there's no more headwind. So it's a good time to be in this space.
So I was going to ask you what the intent of those policies and regulations were. And you're saying that it was primarily based on the idea that it is capital to be used for nefarious means?
Well, that was the argument. The reality is that most of these politicians, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it's pretty easy to track where they get their campaign contributions. And it's all banks and older financial institutions that are unyielding. But then you see a shift early this year where BlackRock
I saw
and
that.
Fidelity and a lot of these companies launch a Bitcoin ETF, and it finally gets through the SEC because you don't tell anybody at BlackRock no, because they're kingmakers, right? And then Fidelity and ARK and all these companies, and they all start coming on board. Now you have actual clean, regulated financial product, a Bitcoin ETF. Then you have an Ethereum ETF. And if even that's all there ever was, that makes up 2/3 of the entire cryptocurrency space. So you have a kind of store of value / hedge against insanity, which is Bitcoin. And you have a smart contract platform / a kind of world computer, which is Ethereum. And they are now regulated assets. And there's more steps, right? Like they're trying to launch options markets against those assets and things like that. But those are actual financial products at this point. So it's no longer that Bitcoin is that sketchy little thing that you use to buy porn or whatever, or these other silly arguments that are drummed up, which apply to everything ever, like gold coins, credit cards, cash. I'm pretty sure they've all been used for porn at some point. So those kind of arguments are stale, old, sad arguments. And the reality is that probably 3-4 years from now, we won't talk about crypto finance versus finance or legacy. It'll just be money again. Some people do digital money. Some people do paper money. Some people have coins. It really makes no difference. People can just kind of choose where they want to hold their units. But if at 3 a.m. you want to do something with your currency, you can't do it with anything other than some kind of disintermediated or, digital product. And I guess the other thing to say is like money has been digital since the 70s. It just hasn't been digital and distributed ledger based, meaning that we could all see it. Like imagine a world where we could see everything the government does all day long in real time. Like have you ever logged into that world, the world debt clock?
Yeah.
And watch that son of a gun just spin and you're like, oh my God, that's us. Imagine if we saw where all that money was going in real time. Every American could go, oh, weird. We just gave $3.7 billion to sheep farmers in Namibia. Why did we do that? When there's like people that eat like dirt on the side of the road here in America. So like that changes things, like the visibility of it changes. And that scares a lot of politicians. The Nancy Pelosi's of the world are uncomfortable with that. The Elizabeth Warrens are uncomfortable with that. Just old school politicians, bankers are not super comfortable when you don't need a banker. This idea that you need them, that's over with. But again, that's over with for someone like me that's kind of at the front end of it on the edge. Whereas for Joe Sixpack, it's just going to take a while before they're comfortable. And what it will likely be is this slow transition to where you don't even realize it. And in the background, your bank is starting to do transactions digitally, and you notice your fees reduce or go to zero, which is what they should be. So all of a sudden, things just look a little easier. You're not even sure why. And then they inform you, oh, by the way, we've been processing digital transactions for the bank. It saved you X amount of money. Pretty soon, you will likely be able to hold digital stable coins and like USDC or Bitcoin or Ethereum right there at your bank. Because why would they want that business exiting in the first place? They'll come around. And so I think this kind of, this election cycle opened the floodgates for kind of common sense regulation. And that's just something we haven't had. It's just been murky for 12 years.
So it's at 89,000 or around there right now.
89.49, yeah.
Okay, you know exactly. And I got a buddy who lives out there in California who texted me the other day that he thinks it will get near 200,000 in the next 12 months. Where do you think it? Because like if I'm sitting talking to my wife last night, which I was, and I told her what we got this for, 10 years ago or whatever.
You want me to fill in her comments for you?
Yeah.
Sell it.
That's exactly what she said. Sell it right now. I need a new car. Sell it. I need this. It's all about her. You know how women are. But the point is, smart, investors do know when the top is, right? I mean, even you, I know that I remember you were into was it the digital trading cards bit?
NFTs.
You kind of got in it and then got out pretty quickly. You took advantage of that. You're a smart guy. And so I'm going to ask that same smart guy, when do you get out of Bitcoin?
I would say that there is a different proposition for what Bitcoin is. Again, it's a hedge against stupidity, and stupidity, there's no end in sight. I just don't think humans change. I think people are mostly greedy and sometimes a little bit altruistic, but like more heavily on the greed side of that spectrum. And I just don't think bankers will not be bankers. I don't think that central bankers will stop monetary policy. I don't think they'll quit eroding currency like value. Like right now with 2% inflation, that's not real, but the 2% inflation that the government would have you believe that we have statistically, every 20 years, your savings get chopped in half as far as buying power. So think about that for a second. You work your whole life. You might get if you work and you get a pension or retirement, every 20 years, and people are living to 100 now. That is happening. So every 20 years, all of your shit gets cut in half. Every 20 years, what if you retire at 40 and run another 3 of those? So now your 100,000 is 50,000 is 25,000 is $12,000 in buying power. That should piss you off. And we know it's not 2%. That's a fictitious number. It's probably closer to 7 or 8%, the real like debasement figures. So every 5 or 6 years, your buying power gets chopped in half. It's not cool. So it means, one, you never ever get to retire. Like forever. You're working forever. There's no way around it, at least until the robots take over. So you start thinking like, damn, I do all this work, but really it's eroding as fast as I can make it. So that's problematic. So if you think that is going to continue, then you buy Bitcoin as a hedge against just all of that weird behavior. It's not a store of value in the arguments of like gold and all this kind of stuff. It's a stupidity hedge. And if you just think stupidity and bad behavior continue, you don't ever sell it. There's ways to leverage it and kind of like you could borrow against it. There's all sorts of ways to pull money out of Bitcoin without selling Bitcoin. Or you would sell tiny fractions of it as the price goes up. But I could see a bunch of ways where Bitcoin could be $1 or $2 million a coin in the next 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, it's just these things move so fast. I mean, earlier this year we were in the 30,000 range. This year, so he said, okay, just did a quick 3x. So do a 3x and run that 5 years out. So if we're close to 100, and then we're 300, and then we're 900, and then we're 2.7 million. There's 3 years out. We haven't even gotten to 5 years yet. And then we're 10 million, and then we're 30 million, and we're 5 years out, and all we did is the same thing that Bitcoin has statistically done many, 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 many times. So it's like I don't want to get in the way of that. I don't want to, penny pinch or what is it? What's the saying? Bend over in front of a cement mixer to pick up a nickel. And if you know that your cash, like in savings, is just getting eroded faster than you can make it, that should be frightening to people. Just like, and also kind of frustrating, like, Jesus, why am I busting my ass if like I'm really only getting paid half 20 years from now? So you start thinking, is there some place I can put my money where I don't have to be there every day clicking buttons and speculating and doing all this bullshit and following CNBC and all these idiots like Kramer and anyway, you can just buy some Bitcoin and that's your hedge against all that.
So it's interesting to me, and I don't know how much you think about stuff like this, but obviously Elon Musk is a guy who's very, very familiar with the crypto world. I know he's recently kind of gotten back into the game a little bit, but him being tied at the hip with Trump now, and Trump being the guy who people are, hey, I voted for Trump because of crypto, is hilarious to me. It was hilarious to me when he spoke at Bitcoin 2024 and signed off with, have fun with your Bitcoin or whatever else you're playing with. It's almost like how confused I am that Trump is able to sell his message to rural people who have nothing in common with him. Donald Trump has absolutely no idea how blockchain or crypto or Bitcoin work. Yet somehow this old money finance guy is like the savior for Bitcoin and for crypto. And it is hilarious to me because it's working. but he's not a guy who could explain any of this to you. Did that strike
But
you as odd?
no, he's a survivor.
Well, I
You
mean,
can-
he survived largely because he took an inheritance, and if he had just simply put it in the S&P 500, he would have more money now.
True, but he's survived other things too. Like he's like the definition of a survivor. And by the way, I'm not here nor there. I don't have a horse in this race. I bet with my wallet and nothing else.
Sure.
This is a guy that's been pinned against the ropes over and over and over, and he finds a way. And also, he and his family have been in the crypto space for a couple of years, and they've made a lot of money. So I don't think it takes much to imagine that he is pro crypto. He also saw a group of people, up and coming wealthy people, that are going to inherit a lot of the kind of controlling positions, at least in finance, in the future. And he said, not a bad idea to court these guys. And if in the process he learned about NFTs and put 10 million bucks in his back pocket and all this kind of stuff, cool. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I don't care if he hates crypto. I know that he's made money off crypto. And when you've made money off something, you kind of like it.
Yeah, and in the general anti-regulation thing, I mean, that applies to several other, parts of the financial sector, and we know that that's true to what
Yeah.
he's been about. Yeah.
But they're already putting in place, like Cynthia Loomis has pushed forward this idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which would have been asinine a year ago. And now you're like, well, if Bitcoin does continue to melt up and it is a fixed asset with a fixed supply, and those things are true, we've never had an actual scarce asset on Earth, not where we know the supply in real time, all the time, and we know where all of it is all the time. It's not like gold, where you may be able to get it off a comet, or you go find another mountain full of gold in Southern California. This is an asset where for sure this is the scarcity, this is the amount, here's where it is. And if you see this asset becoming part of balance sheets, right? 2-3% here, 2-3. Pennsylvania just came out and said they're going to try to allocate a percentage of their $7 billion. They have like a fund in their state pension fund, about $7 billion of it. They're going to earmark some of that, or at least try to earmark some of that towards Bitcoin. And there's about 10 other states that are likely to follow. If 2 or 3 states do it, every state does it. Then the provincial and rural banks will do it, because they would have to, because once hedging behavior kicks in, you have to hedge other people's hedge. Like, if all of you guys are like, we're holding this and this and this, I'm like, I guess I got to do that too, because that's what you do as a confident fiduciary. So it will start this kind of behavior that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if the US buys 1 million Bitcoin, that right there is intense. So let's say they say, okay, the plan is over the next so many years, we're going to buy up to 1 million Bitcoin and hold it for the United States as a hedge against the insanity that we see with the little debt clock. So if that happens, there's your double or triple in the price of Bitcoin over the next, with nothing different, just that, over the next 2 to 3 years. Then you have other companies and states, and then think about outside the United States, these smaller countries, the El Salvadors and things, that everybody warned them, what are you doing? Why are you guys buying Bitcoin? And it's the best decision they ever made for their country. So this kind of has a domino effect. And nothing in finance, everyone's a lemming. None of these bankers have an original thought. So they're just going to pile on in the trade. Well, they have been. You're already seeing it. And what happens when the guys in Dubai get involved? I say guys because women get hit with rocks, but the guys in Dubai that have all the money, and they go, I want myself 1 million Bitcoin. So when that piles and piles and piles, it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's like, I just don't want to get in the way of that. I don't think people should go piling. I think people should do what these banks are doing. They should say, you know what? I'm going to put 3 to 5% of my savings in Bitcoin, where I know that it's unlikely that it's going to implode like the rest of the cash. The saying in finance is cash is trash, because you've got to be able to make more money on your savings than you're losing to debasement. So if you're not beating it, you're just lighting that money on fire. And that money is moments of your life you traded for some asshole to give you currency units. So you traded them and you just put it in a bank and watch it light on fire. So for me, that makes me panicked.
So don't sell, Dan.
That's I think the short answer is don't sell.
Yeah, that's a quick one.
So speaking of Elon, though, I know you've always said you don't like the stuff like Doge, the silly little coins like that. But Elon is pretty stoked on Doge. Is there any chance that at least Doge becomes something bigger because of
social memes and all this kind of stuff? They are real. I mean, I can't discount those things. That's just not the way I think as an investor. But I kind of say, like, to each his own. I know one of my buddies is a World Series of Poker player. He's great. He makes a lot of money, like ridiculous money, doing ridiculous things. But he's good at those ridiculous things. So whatever your jam is investment wise, I don't think meme coins and crap like that are investing. I think they're gambling. But as long as you're honest with yourself and you say, yeah, I'm gambling on electric money that really has no value other than this kind of meme value. But you could also argue from the other side of it, like, well, memes are very powerful, and there's like a social value to that, which I can't discount that, because many of these meme coins have reached valuations of well over $1 billion, and there's nothing there. It's just a picture of a frog or whatever. But if enough people want the frog picture, the problem is that typically those things, they move fast and they deteriorate fast. And so a lot of money gets hoovered up and people start getting caught up in it. And my only worry is that those kinds of assets, they give people the think that, like, I think I'm investing, and really you're gambling. And then when all the money goes away because two influencers are like, I'm out, and the whole thing goes to zero or close to zero, there's a bunch of people that are like, wait a minute, but I don't understand. I thought I was investing. So as long as people understand what they're doing, I mean, more power to the memes. And plus, they're kind of funny. Like, there's one with the dog with a hat. Like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very funny to me that they named this new department the Department of Government Efficiency and put Elon in charge of it. It literally just, as a press release, it says DOGE.
Yeah,
like, they're just trolling every single.
But you know what? I can't wait to be a fly on the wall for those discussions.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different.
It's going to be must-watch TV. It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. But, I mean, I guess bringing it back to investments, as long as people understand what they're doing, I'm cool with people doing whatever they want. That's not my path, but it's not for me to tell someone else not to do it. I know that I know people that are heavy in the meme coin space, and I've massacred them return-wise by doing little or nothing and just trying to buy what I think is high quality ish in the crypto space and just waiting. Like, mostly the best move is just no move. So, you know, Dan, if you had traded in and out of Bitcoin over and over, what are the chances that you would have nailed it just right every time and still be in Bitcoin?
Probably 90-95%. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah. Right, but for everyone else, it'd be tough.
Right, yeah.
So, real dumb guy question here. I get the meme coin is the value is basically what society makes it at the time. But if Bitcoin and Ethereum, like, what is the value in those? Like, what, if we go back to the cash standard, it's based on gold, which is rarity. What I have a loose understanding of that. But why is Bitcoin, why does that have a value?
I think that, a value proposition is weird, because what's valuable to one person is valuable or not to another person. So that's a weird kind of opaque kind of thing to discuss. But the way I see it is, a hedge against stupidity is kind of like a simple way to say that I like this asset that no one can tell me what I can or can't do with it at any time of the day, anywhere in the world, forever. An asset that I have to willingly give it up. No one can take it. I can go murder 65 people, get on a plane, and I still got my Bitcoin. I shouldn't, but I could. And so I have that forever. And there's a lot of value in actual true possession, which I think if you look in your life, there's not many things that we don't really possess anything, right? Like, we kind of hold stuff and then give it off to whoever, and then they squander it. That's like the cycle. But in the case of Bitcoin, like, people even joke, like, well, if you memorize your passphrase, and they say, okay, well, what happens when you die? You can't take it with you. Well, if you memorize your passphrase, maybe you can take it with you. You just wake up on the other side with your passphrase and log in to whatever. So it's the idea of an immutable system of money that you have control over, and no one can stop you. if you want to send it anywhere in the world at any time, you can do that. No one can stop you. And I think there's where, for me, that's where the value is. The fact that it has all these comparisons to gold and inflation hedges and all that, this is a lot of it's window dressing, but enough people believe that it's valuable to actually truly possess an asset and be able to do transactions with people you don't know and don't have to worry about it. There's a lot of value in that. So you can do business with people you do not trust, but the network, there's so much trust embedded in the network that you can do that transaction. With money, you can't quite do that. Like, you're like, okay, I'll bring the duffel bag. Please don't kill me. Like, so I just think there's value in that. But everybody's going to find value in different ways. In Venezuela, where there was kind of like socialized electricity, people were buying old Bitcoin miners because electricity is free, and they were using it as their currency debases, like 1,000,000% inflation a year. They were using Bitcoin miners to make little bitty bits of Bitcoin, but because their currency was inflating so fast, that fed like thousands and thousands of families. And the cops were like raiding people's homes and grabbing Bitcoin miners and going to the cop shop and plugging them in. So you do have scenarios like that where Bitcoin actually saved people's lives in a really weird way, and obviously in a really screwed up situation. And then, of course, you have that other percentage of people that were lucky, the lucky early rich ones that were like, oh, I bought $15 worth of Bitcoin when it was 8 cents, and I forgot about it, and now I'm rich and I'm giving financial advice. There's that too. So you like kind of scrape the top off and don't listen to like that group. But if that means something to you, this idea of transacting in a trustless world, then I think there's a lot of value there, and that's been supported by the fact that still, Bitcoin is the most appreciating asset in human history, and there's no point longer than 24 hours yet where if someone told you to buy Bitcoin and you did it, you wouldn't be winning ever. So you see something like that, you go, well, I don't want to stand in the way of it. I sure don't want to go short against it. I don't want to, stand in front of that cement mixer.
So, last one for me. Why exactly do you think that the CIA created it?
Yeah, they were bored. They were lazy.
That's what I've heard.
That and
that
space and time travel, right? Like those CIA projects
created Bitcoin,
which ironically is funny because as he's talking about with using it for criminal purposes. And the idea of, like, as he said, we're sending X amount of billions or millions to some small African country, and like, why? What is it? The CIA absolutely pays for illegal operations with cryptocurrency. So when people put forward the idea of like, oh, they would not. They don't want their activity traced.
No, and the problem with crypto, I don't know if people realize there's nothing private about crypto.
Yeah.
You can see every transaction that's ever happened in the history of history. There are a few specific projects that are privacy focused, where they mix. The idea is you mix up a bunch of transactions and then resend those transactions to different wallets, and it obscures a lot of behavior. But nothing is invisible in all of crypto, and so it's the worst thing for criminals to use. But it's like shooting someone and then just go to the cops with a gun and be like, here, you guys are going to need this in a few months when you find that body in my trunk. When that thing really starts to smell. So like, you don't do crime with crypto. That's stupid. What you do is you do business really fast. Like JP Morgan Chase, which talks trash about crypto all the time, they process over $1 billion a day in repo transactions. So like 2-party and 3-party repo transactions every single day, billions every day from the thing that they don't like. Well, now they've adjusted it where they say we don't like Bitcoin, but we like other stuff. We like crypto. I like blockchain, but not Bitcoin. Which is kind of a silly argument. I like living, but not oxygen. Well, okay.
So, you got any plugs? How can people find you on YouTube? Just search Nick Black.
Nick Black Live. We do a show 5 days a week, and it's kind of always educational. And we just try to talk about what's new and what's current, and just steer people from being dumb. There's a lot of ways to be dumb in crypto. There's more ways to be dumb than be smart. But on the other side of it, you don't have to be that smart to make nice returns, which I think are at a minimum comparable, but likely way better than like your traditional 401k type returns and your stock market kind of edge investment type returns. So I think even if people don't really like crypto, it's important. What we talk about a lot of like financial common sense, like just looking at a situation and saying that's stupid. Don't give those idiots your money. And I think that kind of common sense, rational financial thinking, you can use that everywhere, right? Like it propagates to your whole life.
You still do a show with Anthony Scaramucci? Do you know that he did, Jake?
I recall that. Yeah.
Jake was a big fan.
Oh,
Anthony and I are friends, and we diverge on choices as far as investment choices. I think if he had listened more to me, they would be about 9 billion richer in Skybridge. He did not, and they are not.
All right. Well, we'll check you out on YouTube, and appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Nick.
That is the great Nick Black.